Well, welcome back to the channel. The project we're going to work on today is this Earthway 12-volt ATV spreader. It's called the Earthway Even Spread. I picked this up at auction for about 70 bucks, I think it was, which is better. I think this one retails for close to 300 bucks, somewhere plus or minus, right around there. I think I mentioned before that I have about 2 acres of hay, which is just the right size to be a pain in the ass to fertilize. It's not worth it to pay somebody to come in here and do it. It's not worth it to go and pick up a fertilizer buggy with fertilizer and drag it around with my truck. And it takes a while to do it by hand. So for the most part, I've kind of neglected it. Every now and then I'll fertilize it. But I really want to do a better job, one for the health of the field, and two, to get more hay off of it. I barely get enough hay to pay my irrigation bill and maybe have a little funny money to buy some stuff for the shop. So it wouldn't hurt to sell a little more hay and get a little more money. So the key thing with it was, though, is it did not come with any kind of a mount. And I started this project back last summer, before I was really filming all of my projects and posting them up on YouTube. So I'm already partway done with the project. I've built this mount here. And of course I used some 1/4-inch plate because, as I mentioned in some of my other videos, I have plenty of that. So set this aside. So I made this base out of 1/4-inch plate. The supports out of some little scrap 1/4-inch I had. I bought this piece of tube. And then this little piece that I welded on here, and you'll see a little closer here in a minute, was to try and take up some of the slack. The tube they use there is not your typical tube. Plus they riveted a lot of that, the controls and stuff that are on there, excuse me, are riveted to that tube. So you have space issues inside. It's hard to get a really tight fit. So that's where we're at as far as the mount goes. Then the other thing I did was I machined up these little brackets. I have 4 of them. And they go up underneath the plate, and they're going to be used to clamp the plate to the rack on the back of my ATV. And that's how this thing mounts, basically just like it was. You know, if you imagine the front of the ATV is over there, this is the back, and then the spreader hangs off the back, so you get a nice spread out the back. So that's what I've done so far. The key problem is on the spreader itself. See if you can see this here. This lever with this setting right here is what controls how big the gates inside of here open and how much fertilizer it lets out at a given time. And then this 12-volt motor right here spins the disc, which actually spreads the material. So you need to be able to open and close this as you go up and down the field. You know, as you get to the end of the field, you need to be able to shut it off, turn around, get pointed back the right way, situate it, open it up, start driving again. So because it doesn't have a mount, it apparently, that's where the handle or whatever that activated this was. It also didn't have the cable, which I bought. So that's where I'm at now, is need to fabricate up something for the handle that has enough range of motion that I probably don't need this whole amount. I probably maybe need half or less of this. But, you know, for future use, I don't know what I'm going to spread through here. So I want a handle that will allow me to open it all the way up if that's what I want to be able to do. So that's what we're going to work on. Over here on the side, you get a little better view of that mechanism, and also kind of how cheesily some of the stuff is riveted on there. It's not very tight. But anyway, so what we need to be able to do is open and close, you know, via this lever in a way also that will lock in that position, right? So cable I picked up at one of the big box stores, and that's not crimped or anything. I just have that looped on there for now. But that needs to be able to loop up and over, and hopefully maybe avoid this pin a little bit. But you know, down at the bottom, have a lever that will work this up and down, and also be able to hold it. And then this stop here is, let me get that out of the way. This is an adjustable stop. So once you figure out exactly how much you need the gates to open, you just lock that down at whatever position, and then each time you hit the handle, you know, it'll open that much and stop. So, excuse me. So let's take a look at the bottom down here. So kind of what I've envisioned so far is, you know, another plate, kind of like what I have here, and then a piece of handle material, which I have this I think it's 3/16 by 3/4. Maybe cut a piece of this, have it so that it hinges down here, and then I picked up these two nylon washers. So what I was thinking was, you know, you could sandwich those with a bolt and either have a nut on the back side of this or have that threaded, and they would provide enough slip to be able to sort of shut the gates on and off, but at the same time, you know, enough pressure that it'll stay in position. So that's TBD. We'll have to see how well that works. And then the other thing is that somewhere along here we'll need to have a little knob so that you can slip the cable over it, because the cable is going to stay with the spreader that comes off of the mount, where the handle is going to stay with the mount. So somewhere on here we need to turn a little knob and bolt it on here so that the cable can come down, slip over there, you know, do its thing, and then when you get ready to take it off, you just slip it off and unload the spreader off the mount. So one of the things we need here is something for the cable to loop around here. You can see here they've used sort of these rivets. I dug around through all my hardware bins and found this little 1/4-20 carriage bolt, and I have a lock washer, or sorry, a lock nut to go with it. The only problem is I need to drill the hole out a little bit, so I'm going to use my drill with a step bit, and I've marked my bit there with a little bit of Sharpie to help me no, that's the one after 1/4 inch, so that's where I need to stop. Just before I get to that. That should work. Grab a pair of pliers to hold the head and a wrench to tighten the bolt. See if I can get a little bit more leverage on it. So our cable. I think leaving just enough where if I need to I can always slip that off of there will work. Let me grab a pair of crimpers. I might tighten that up just a skosh. And I'm just using a pair of electrical crimpers like you use for insulated, non-insulated contacts. Alright, so let's see if that's going to work. Now we just need to figure out exactly how to put the bottom part. So down here at the bottom, kind of my vision is just a handle like that with these couple nylon washers in between there. So we need to drill through here, put a hole in here, so we can run a bolt through there and, you know, get this plate tacked down to the base plate with the welder. And then we can kind of mess around with where to put the end for the loop over here, so it'll give us a full range of motion. Now it's been a while since I've had this on the four-wheeler, And I want to say the seat is somewhere in here. So we may not get a full ability to go all the way down. So we may want to put it out fairly far. I just cut this at 6 inches to play around with. It was a lot easier than that 3-foot piece, but if needed, you could probably go up a good 8 inches or so. But for now, I'll probably trim these corners off to kind of match these other brackets a little bit as far as style goes. And then the other thing I wanted to do is probably just go ahead and grind these off, make them look pretty on both ends. Not only breaks the corners, but gives it a more finished look there. So I'll do a little work on the bench grinder, just kind of round those corners off, and we'll be back. Okay, so we got the hole in our handle. Now we just need to put a hole in our base plate here. So I used a couple of my new toys I picked up. I picked up this Starrett 6-inch hook rule. I've been watching like Adam Booth, A-Bomb 79, and I think Ox Tools. Some of these guys use these, and boy, it just seemed handy. Not cheap. Use Enco was having a 15% off and free shipping the other day, so I finally broke down and ponied up for one of these. And then I picked up a little scriber. So we just kind of need to figure out where we want to be. This is 3 inches long, so we need to be somewhere in 1.5 inches. It'd be nice to be centered. And then I'm thinking something if we kind of look at how this needs to be able to rotate 3/4 there, probably okay. 7/8 might be a little better, so I think we'll go with 7/8 up from the bottom. And then I'll get a punch and do a punch mark, and then back over to the mill, and we'll drill that, and then we can kind of bolt it all together and see where we need to be. Okay, well, let's just do a little test assembly here and see if our nylon washers are going to do what we want. maybe just a little tighter, and that will probably work. Using a lock nut, so hopefully it doesn't just twist itself loose, right? And the nut gets loose, especially out in the field. But I think that's plenty tight there if you're banging around on the ATV over bumps in the field or whatever. That it's still easy enough to turn, reach back and turn on and off. So I think that's going to work. So we can weld this plate, figure out our alignment on the base plate, where we want to be. We can get that welded in, and then start looking at where we want the cable loop to come to, and make the part that we're going to bolt on here to hold the cable loop. Alright, so it's the next day, and I've got our bracket tacked in place. I broke those corners kind of like the ones I'd already built on there, and I made it flush with those just for aesthetic purposes. Looks like it works pretty good with those nylon washers. So the next thing is to figure out how to attach our cable and where, so that it gives us enough throw to open and close the doors in the bottom of the hopper fully. So I just kind of measured, made a spot, made a mark on my cable, kind of pushed it down, brought the cable down, and it'll be about right there, which I think is a pretty comfortable height. That leaves me enough room to get my fingers under it from the rack on the ATV. I did do a test fit, and the back of the ATV seat's actually about over here, so there's plenty of room. Depending on how I mount this, there's plenty of room there for my hands. And then dug around through my hardware, and I think what I'm going to do is use another carriage bolt. This particular one, I think if I remember right, I live in the country where there's no DSL and there's no cable TV, so I have wireless, quote unquote wireless internet, and I have an antenna mounted on my house. And a couple years ago, my original antenna finally died, and I think this is what held it to the mount on the house. They replaced it with a different style antenna that had to be mounted somewhere else. So I think what I'm going to do is, and I didn't do it with the other carriage bolt, but I may take it back off and do it, is mount this in a collet in the lathe and just reach in here and round these corners off a little bit, and just so it doesn't kink on the cable. So just break those corners a little bit, and then it needs to go on the other side so that the cable is aligned vertically with the top pulley, straight up and down as it can be. So I think what I'm also going to do then is, I'm not going to put a nut and washer and everything on this side, because every time I reach back here to grab this, I'll probably be snagging my fingers on it. Because I'll probably just cut this off, drill a hole, and then just weld the end of the bolt, clean it up, get all the finish off of it so I can weld it, and I'll just weld it in there. And then the other thing I was thinking is, if I had left this a little longer, I could bend the top over and make a nice handle on it. But since I didn't, I don't feel like cutting another piece of stock. I may turn a little aluminum piece or something that we can bolt on there. That'll, when I reach back with my hand, it'll give me something to grab and pull this around with. So let's go over to the lathe and work on those pieces. It's a little tricky to light this without getting some glare here off of my my collet chuck, but I got that mounted up in a 5/16 collet, and we're just going to reach in there with the parting blade and touch those corners off a little bit. That's probably pretty good. I just don't want something that won't ultimately kink the cable over the long term. So now what I want to do is just go ahead and pull it out, and we'll part it off right here so that we have just enough of a stub to weld into our handle. So you can loosen up the collet. I want about 1/8 of an inch of those threads left past this point here. So that's about the width of my blade or so. Right there. So it looks like we need to go all the way right up to the collet. Let me pull it out a little more. So from there to about right there is where we need to part it off. Through all my chips to find it. So there's our part. We just have to take that little tit off of it, and then we should be ready to weld that in. So we're back over at the welding table. We've got our little piece that we cut down on the lathe, and then I ground that little pip off with the bench grinder and kind of took the corners off a little bit and put our 5/16 hole in here. You can see there's just enough to get a weld down in there. So that'll be the next thing. I'm just going to go in with the welder and weld it in there solid, and we'll mount her back up and kind of do a little more testing, make sure we're on the right track. And there's our button welded on. And in case you're wondering, no, I did not get that hole in the center. I thought I'd left the vise set up from last night centered on this handle, but I guess I didn't. I think I left it for that hole on the other bracket, but it's only off, 1/16 or something. It's no big deal. So, and I may end up grinding that off as we progress here. But let's get it on there once it cools down and see where we're at. Mounted the handle back up with the button on it, and we just need to give it a little test here. One thing I did notice is, one change I'd probably make here is moving this handle, the hole for this handle, further out on this bracket just to give us a little better angle on this. This is a hardened pin, it doesn't really matter. And once you start to move it, it kind of clears it a little bit. But so if we make it tight, more or less tight, right where it's at, just like if we put a loop on it, and we go to right there, and that's our full range of motion. So that looks pretty good. The only thing I like to do now is just make a little handle to be able, so when I reach back I can grab a hold of this easier, since I had to make it close to this tube so that the cable pretty much ran straight down from this top bracket. This thing doesn't swivel or do anything, so I wanted that cable down as straight as I could. So we'll go over to the lathe and look at making a little handle. I've got some of these 1-inch aluminum drops that we can use, and maybe we'll try knurling it. I've never really knurled anything on this lathe, so maybe we'll give it a try and see how it goes. I'm thinking about 2 inches, so about right there is all I really need to reach back there and grab. So, and then we'll drill and tap the end of it so we can just drill another hole in here, run a bolt in, some Loctite, and we'll be in business. Over on the lathe, I've got the 3-jaw mounted, got a piece of stock in here, and I think there's actually enough room to actually be able to use my hook scale. So we're looking for 2-inch piece, so I'm going to leave myself about 1/2 inch, just a working room off the face there, and for tool bits, and we'll face it off. Okay, so I've been turning this down. We're trying to get 3/4, and we're at like 752, so that's close enough. So next thing I'm going to do is get set up for knurling and see if we can't knurl this a little bit, and then we'll need to drill and tap, and then part off and go mount it to our handle and see how it works. So let me get set up for knurling and we'll give that a go. I've been messing around with this for a little while, trying to get the knurling tool set up, and I think I've got it there where I want it. I ended up adding a center just because of the pressure I figured I was going to put against it. Got it nice and square. It looks like it's tracking okay. And I'm going to feed it out at about 0.024 per revolution. So we're going to see how that goes. Throw a little extra lube on there. I'm running in back gear as slow as this lathe goes, which is 40 RPMs. So I'm just letting it go nice and easy. And it's going to be tight, not hitting the center here. I think we might have rubbed up against the center a little bit. Oh, it looks good enough to me. I mean, it gives me some grip. I don't know, I think it's good enough. Still seems like one wheel was hitting a little harder than the other one. I tried to adjust for that, but it's as good as I got it. We wanted about 2 inches, so really about right where our knurl started is it's going to be the length of our handle. So that makes things pretty easy. Okay, now we need to drill and tap that. And I'm just going to go 1/4 I think that'll be sufficient for that. And then we'll part it off and go check it out. And just going to part it off right past the little decorative mark I made there. Oops. Helps to get it back into gear. Missed it anyway. And here's our part. I got to take that little pip off of there, but other than that, that looks like it'll be a pretty good little handle. So let's go over and once I deburr it and clean that off, we'll go over and put a hole in our handle, and we'll mount this on there, and we'll see what it looks like. And we're at our moment of truth here. Now I did make sure I got the hole in the center this time, so I'm good to go there. Fits good, looks sharp. Just wondering if that bolt's going to interfere with our wire. Looks like it might to some degree, depending on how we crimp it possibly. So once we're past that point, it's okay though. Just right when it's vertical, which as long as we get enough slack to return it. I think what I may do is look for a 1/4 inch machine screw. We'll countersink a little bit in there, and that way the head won't be sticking out. So let me dig around, see if I have one. I've got the handle mounted up. I didn't find I was looking for the countersink style machine screw. I didn't find that, but I did find a round head machine screw, and that seems to work pretty good. It doesn't snag on the cable. I went ahead and cut the cable to the length we needed and put the other ferrule on there, and left enough slack that I can take it on and off as I dismount the thing from the ATV, and I can leave the cable with the spreader. So it works pretty good. The key problem I'm having, and you can kind of see it there, is that even though I tighten these up and I've got a lock nut, and I've tried sandwiching the handle between the two nylon washers, and I've tried a couple of different things. But eventually it works itself loose. The more you work it up and down, the more it works itself loose. So I'm thinking now what I need possibly is a bushing inside the handle over the bolt so that the handle is not rubbing on the bolt. That may or may not be my problem. But I dug around through my thing of stuff and I found this little piece of material. Fits well over a 1/4 inch bolt. It's about 3/8 on the outside. So it looks like a W drill would be kind of a close fit for a bushing. So I think what I'm going to do is take this off, drill that out to a W size drill, and then probably go maybe over to the lathe and just nip a little piece of this off and use it as a bushing over the bolt and see if that helps improve things. So I'll get back to you when I'm ready to try that. Here's our bushing, literally hot off the lathe. Drilled our hole out to a W. Looks like it fits pretty good. Might be just a skosh bit too long. I don't know, we'll see. That may actually work okay. We'll see. Let's assemble it and find out. Can't tell if those nylon washers are moving or not. Looks like they're not, so the handle's sliding in between them like I want. So let's hook up here and seems a little loose. The nut turned a little bit that time. So did that washer, but right there it's, you know, if I'm simulating bouncing around down the field, I think it may work out. Right there gives us full extent of what the hopper needs. So I think that worked. I think we're good. Probably next thing is I'll go ahead and weld this in solid because everything appears to be working just fine. I'll weld that bracket in solid. Probably mount it up on the ATV and take it for a test run, just to make sure the handle doesn't move around out in the field. But you know, if I need to come up with something else for the bottom there. But other than that, everything's looking good. Once I know it works, I'll run the whole thing back through the sandblaster and clean up all the weld crap and everything, and shoot a couple coats of paint on it, and we'll be ready to fertilize, which is coming up quick here. Spring is kind of sprung here in my part of Idaho. We actually had a pretty warm winter. Our February was the warmest on record so far, and it's kind of weird to be sitting around in 50s and watching you guys there back on the East Coast in your parkas shoveling all that snow out of your driveways. It's kind of weird. But anyway, guys, so I'll probably put in some video of us testing this, and we'll go from there. Looks good, feels good. Everything seems to work. Okay, so here's our finished mount, and we're going to mount it up on the ATV. and give everything a little test run. And you can see how the clamps that I made go on the bottom, and then they go around these bars here on the four-wheeler. So let's get it mounted up. Okay, so for electrical, it just uses a thumb switch, just like my weed sprayers do. And that runs that 12-volt motor. And then the handle that we made controls the gates, which controls how much fertilizer spills onto the disc. And the reason we need the handle is because even if the disc isn't running, fertilizer can just free flow out of the hopper, and we don't want that. So we need both. So I'm going to fire this up, start the disc, open the gate, and I got some 1616 in there for a test, and we'll just make a little pass right here. Handle worked, stayed exactly where it was supposed to while I was spreading. One thing I noticed with this spreader, oops, I just hit the switch, is it does tend to throw it in the direction of the rotation. So that's just something I'll have to be aware of when I'm fertilizing, that it's mostly throwing it to my left. Other than that, works great. Thanks for coming along on this project. I'm going to take it all apart, run it through sandblast, paint it, and for all intents and purposes, it's done. You can check that one off the list. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next project.